Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Manly Convos. I'm Corey Cummins, the founder. Just to give you some background on what Manly Convos is, if you've never listened, basically what we're trying to do is destigmatize men's mental health. And we're doing this in a couple ways. One, we have convos with men who have gone to therapy. We also have conversations with mental health professionals talking about specific topics. And we also talk to nonprofits and founders of men mental health group. And we kind of bring this all together to kind of help men understand and destigmatize men's mental health. So today we have Neilon on. Really, really excited. Neilon, would you actually mind just giving a quick background on yourself and introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is, my main day jobs right now are personal trainer, Thai massage therapist, acro yoga teacher, well-being coach, and I'm writing a couple of books.
Very nice, very nice. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you joining today. And, this is kind of a new thing and we're talking to a lot of different people. So what made you want to come on today and kind of talk about your experience with, mental health and therapy and everything like that?
I think it's an important topic, and it's one that has interested me for a long time. I remember first being very depressed when I was 10, lying in my bed at night going, "This can't be it. Someone take me out of this. This can't be it." That was the main kind of projected thought at the time. And like slowly but surely, I've dug my way out of depression, which took a very long time. And I think it is something to talk about. And I think there's also a balance to be had about talking about things and actually doing practical things that help as well.
So you said you were 10 years old is when you kind of had these thoughts. So I guess
Yeah.
how did you come to when did you actually decide to realize, okay, I need to do something about this? Or how did you kind of take your first steps to kind of get out of that?
Well, it that question is not so simple in a way because it was so pervasive and lasted so many decades. And it's only in the last 4 years that I came out of it. The way I handled it, when I was younger, kind of teens and 20s, was into really dark music, heavy music, and that sort of thing. I made music, and that was a good expression for a long time. And I was one of those people that you wouldn't know was depressed really. I'd be out partying and having a good time, but there was just this layer of noise underneath everything. Um, and it wasn't until I became ill with chronic fatigue, or ME really. So my social life started to break down, and I had a really bad breakup, and that oh, what's your policy on swearing, by the way? So basically, I had this kind of bad breakup, and all my friends sided with the other person. So between my chronic illness and the breakdown of my kind of social life, I spent a lot of time just facing my feelings and going in and in and in and in. And I kind of came up with this process of getting into hypnagogic states, which is like a state between awake and sleep. And it's quite a creative state, and just keep going, keep going, keep going. And eventually I came out the other side. And once I was through the other side, I'm like, oh, something's changed. The depression just fell away, basically.
So what is, you said a hypnagogic, so what is this? Can you explain?
Hypnagogic state.
I've never heard this
Okay.
before in my life. I was like,
Um, So Emerson used to have this process of getting ideas. This is not where I got the idea. Someone told me about this afterwards. So you'd sit in a rocking chair and try and fall asleep because he got the best ideas just before he fell asleep. But then he'd fall
okay.
asleep and forget them. So what he would do, he'd hold two steel balls above brass plates. And when he'd fall asleep, he'd drop the balls. That would wake him up enough to still remember all of these creative thoughts. He'd furiously write them down while he could still remember. So the hypnagogic state is basically a state between awake and sleep. Just as you're falling asleep, you go into this kind of dream-like state, kind of awake, kind of not, quite disembodied, but a state of free association in the mind.
Okay. And how did you learn to actually do this? Because this is probably not something you just go, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden you're just like, here we go.
And it was just something that kind of started to happen. I was curious about it and just that creative state in between. And I was doing a lot of like ketamine journeys, which really prolong and open out that in between state. And I just got curious about, like, so, sometimes you get this amazing idea. It seems amazing at the time, and then afterwards it seems like really bland or nothing at all. And it's like, well, why does it seem so significant there and then just like nothing at all here? So that's really why I started to explore that state. And I began to realize is when you're in that state, there's something that you're aware of about the context of things and the interrelation of things that add more significance to it, add more meaning. So yeah, also with the ketamine journeys, it allows me to feel my physical, mental, and emotional states a lot more distinctly.
It's actually interesting you say that. I know in, well, this is completely different, but in the Ukraine, there's a lot of research coming out that they're using ketamine for PTSD treatment for the for the army veterans afterwards. Obviously, it's it's treated in a certain way, so I wouldn't recommend anybody's doing it. But it's I have heard these types of things where they are, and also things like mushrooms. You're seeing these things start to come into play as well.
Yeah, so ketamine is like the black sheep of the psychedelic family, but it's starting to get more attention in the therapeutic use. There are like ketamine therapists in America, and they use infusions here in the UK for like sometimes for like chronic pain, or they just put you into a bit of a coma for a bit, and when you come out, pain might be gone. So basically what I noticed is that it highlights various internal states in such a way that I could start to apprehend them and understand them and work with them. And I noticed that there was like some conflict in my system, and it's like heard like a buzzing, and I went towards the buzzing, and eventually I could see there was like a real conflict in my early kind of understanding of the world. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but I remember the effect that they were flip-flopping between these two alternative paradigms essentially. And I managed to resolve that. It's like I realized that there was an error in my thinking right in the root of myself. And once I resolved that, everything just got more harmonious, and that harmony stayed.
And what was what was that error that you were seeing or thinking?
I could remember.
When you were 10 years old, you started to have these thoughts and feelings. And between now and when you figured out this hypnagogic state and using, controlled ketamine to work on things, was there anything you did in the middle? Did you ever speak to a mental health professional or anything in that period?
In that period of like a lot of isolation and dealing with a lot of stuff, I did have a therapist for a year, and I was very lucky with who I found. That it was a good match. It's like dating. You've got to have the right match. And I'd found the right person for me. Actually, so they were at an event, a kink event, and they were doing a talk on consent and trauma and things like that. And I just asked them a couple of questions, and I liked their answers. So I said, "Oh, are you taking any clients?" Yeah. So she had space, and I saw her for a year, and I think she really, I know she really helped me through the darkest period, the darkest corner. And she was.
What type of mental health professional was she?
She was a therapist.
Therapist, okay.
Some sort of integrated of various forms,
Yeah.
Like osteopaths. Once you're really good at what you do transcends any particular label.
It's very true.
Like the best osteopaths aren't osteopaths anymore.
That's
They're
very true.
more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. And you said you went to her for a year?
Yeah. And I would have done more if I could have afforded it, but it got me through that rough patch. It allowed me an outlet to talk about things. That was invaluable in itself. It allowed me to help understand a few things, some other kind of, conflicts of thinking um, and shame and that sort of thing. And she even helped me with some like practical things of how to deal with situations and that sort of thing. As far as therapists go, she was reasonably forthright in offering her offerings. Like some therapists, they'll just let you talk and talk and talk, completely unguided for years and years and years. I didn't want that. She said she's not a coach, but I found she was gave enough to be really helpful.
And so you went to her for a year. Did you go? It was like once a week, twice a week, or how
Once
often
a
did you
week,
see her?
once a
Once
yeah,
a week.
once a week, yeah.
And was this before you did the hypnagogic state type stuff, or is this
No, it's
after?
kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Okay.
So so there's two elements to these hypnagogic states. There is like, the ketamine journeys, but it was also with ME, which some people call chronic fatigue syndrome, but it's much more than that. And it's when I wasn't managing it as well as I do now, and so my health would be constantly breaking down, my energy and reserves would break down. I was in like what they call boom and bust, where I started to feel better, I'll do loads of things, and everything would come crashing down again. So I got to see my body and all its various interrelated systems like go offline, break down, reach their capacity, and watch my system break down and build up over and over and over again. And I really got an intimate understanding of how the body works, how the
Right.
biology works, and how that interrelates with all these various systems.
And so what were the things you were saying? So you went to her because she, you said you were in a dark place and with shame
mm.
was, would you mind kind of talking about a little bit of things, what are the things that she really kind of helps you go through and work through?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into it.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of men struggle to even take the step to go to therapy or get help or
Yeah.
anything like that. I
Yeah.
guess because you said you struggle with it from 10 years old. So what was the kind of tipping point for you? Like, okay, I have to go do something about it.
I was pretty desperate at that point. I needed some help. My attitude to is that it's like if you've got a knot on your back, you'll go and get a massage. It's that level of shame for me about. I don't have a big taboo about therapists that some people do. It's a failure. We are struggling as individuals in an atomized society when really we're supposed to be in a community. So getting help doesn't make you less. It actually makes you more because we are interconnected beings. We are less on our own. We are less ourselves on our own. It's only when in relation that we actually become ourselves because we are social animals.
Yeah, you could see that from COVID. And
Yeah.
so what would you tell men? Because I think a lot of men struggle with a couple things. They look and they go, I can't speak to anybody because none of my friends know what I'm going through.
Mm.
And they don't know how to get help or they're afraid to get help. So I guess
Yeah.
what would you kind of tell men that might be listening to this around, depending on obviously everybody struggles for different reasons.
Yeah.
But what would you say to them on like things they should be looking out for to say, listen, this is why you should go speak to someone or go take some type of action.
Basically, if you're in pain and you're struggling and you have internal knots and you're dealing with shame or there's situations you're stuck with or, you're feeling like down or whatever it is, don't speak to your girlfriend about it. Not to any depth. Like get support outside the relationship because you'll just fuck your relationship otherwise. Getting a non-judgmental ear is so invaluable for someone to just receive you and for you to just sit and explore, and you can sit in silence, for 5-10 minutes or just like blurt out what's just been going on for you in the day. It's like getting a sauna or having a massage. It's at the very least it feels good. But like a massage, sometimes it can be painful as you get into the knots. But it's worthwhile when there is a release of that tension afterwards. It's not a big deal. It feels like a big deal and it feels like a failure, but these are all conditioned thoughts from this artificially individualistic society that's getting more and more individualistic, and the more individualistic it gets, the more miserable and anxious we get because it's an unnatural state of being.
I agree. There was two things you said that I wrote down here. One, that was like go get help outside your relationship, that really resonated with me because it's something I always talk to my friends about. I go, people come into relationships with, if you want to call it baggage, and they never work on it, and they just gift that baggage to whoever they're dating, trauma or
Yeah.
fear or jealousy, whatever it be. So that was something that I smiled because I was like, yeah, I see it all the time. And I've spent a lot of time going to therapy for many different reasons and at different stages in life. Sometimes when I broke up with someone, and the big thing for me is, if you don't want to come into a relationship with baggage and be like, here you go, it's now your problem to kind of help me sort this out. And also the other thing was the unbiased opinion, because I've convinced many friends to go seek help, and a lot of them be like, oh, well, I can speak to my friends. And they go, well, one, your friend is going to automatically be biased to you, or they also might have their own issues that then when they listen to you, they project upon you.
Yeah. And sometimes your friend's advice isn't, you don't necessarily want advice. And a lot of and there's only so much you can dump on your friends as well.
Completely agree with that. And I think this is another thing. Sometimes depending on the culture, sometimes depending on your family and your background, obviously, therapy can have a very negative connotation. Like when I started going to therapy, my mother passed when I was 25, and my dad, he's 74 now. He was early 60s when my mom passed, and he had no issues with me going to therapy, but he was like, why do you need to go to therapy? And I had to explain to him, why I was going and what it was doing. And then kind of when I opened up to him about it, he was like, oh, he goes, okay, I can understand why you're going and what it's doing. But I guess, did you, with your family or with friends, did anybody judge you or kind of make you feel weird for going or anything like that? I feel like that sometimes people think that there's going to be like this weird thing about it.
Basically, the way energy works, or because I was totally fine about it, people around me had no choice but to be fine about it. Like, they were just fine about it. If you're not fine about it, it's like people will test you, and it's kind of automatic. It's part of our social being. And it can be a really positive thing, this testing, this teasing, because it lets you know what you're whole about. And someone says, they used to call me hedgehog ears at school because I've got relatively small ears. And at first I was annoyed because they were like picking on me, and then I thought, so what? I've just got small ears, and the charge was gone. And then it became like either like not a thing, they never brought it up, or it's just a cute thing, like a nickname or whatever. So the more fine you are with something, the more fine other people will be. And if people test you on it, take it as an invitation to find out what you want to get whole about.
I really like that. I wrote that down. If you aren't fine, people will test you on it. Yeah, it's really, I really like that. So were there one thing that I ask people on the show, because I think sometimes people might not be ready to go all in and go speak to someone or seek help, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think sometimes a first step is, hey, you could read a book or listen to a podcast or whatever it be. Is there anything you would say to someone, like recommendations on books or anything, you say, hey, here's a great way to kind of dip your toes in to kind of, figure out what this is?
There are some books, but ultimately the primary cause of depression is disconnection and dysregulation. It comes down to resilience. Now, resilience is not just fortitude. It's not putting up with shit. It's being able to deal with the stresses in life and come back to form. Now, what form is relaxed, contented, and socially connected. If you never have all three in one go, you have no resilience, and that's something you can then work on. So I would say working on resilience is going to be more useful than reading 15 books. Maybe one book might be useful. So my cornerstone is cold at the end of showers. That is like worth more than even the therapy, probably. Just that one thing alone. And it's easy to do. We are surrounded by too much comfort, in essence, with like AC and ergonomic design and all of this, and it basically dysregulates all of our biological systems. So you've got to expose yourself to the extremes and nature and people. So the main ways to build resilience is working on stress tolerance with things like going to the gym. So going to the gym is better than SSRIs. Getting good sleep is better than SSRIs. Running regularly is better than SSRIs. So when you take things that work for you, don't force yourself to do anything, but take something that's a little bit of a challenge that you can then incrementally improve on. So when I started in the cold showers, I was in a very sensitive, fragile state. So I'd just start with a couple of seconds of slightly cooler, and then a couple seconds more, the next day, and a couple seconds more the next day. And it literally took me about 6 weeks to get to full cold for a good minute at the end of the shower. And now, actually, I feel every now and again I'll forget to do the cold and get out of the shower and I'm like, what's wrong? I'll get back in and douse myself in the cold. And it just makes me feel alive and clean, and it brings more color into the day, and it definitely helps with depression. But people have got to find things that work for them. Engaging with nature. Going for a run in nature is better than going for a run in a city or going for a run in the gym in terms of depression. But if you go in nature and start to notice and appreciate all the small things and how every day is different, that's when you get even more out of it. It's that connection.
So I was writing down a bunch of stuff: the dysregulation, the disconnection, and then talking about resilience and having extremes. I guess how did you learn all this? Because
by watching my system break down and build up over and over and over again, I started to understand. And I was doing leading a retreat in Morocco, and we did a hammam. So Morocco's hot. And then you go into this even hotter, steamy room and you sit in it for ages. And then they scrub you really hard with these rough cloths and rough soaps. They rinse you off. And when you're finally done, you come out and you're in the waiting room, and then they give you hot tea. I'm like, it's a madness. And then I stepped out into the street. I'm like, I feel acclimatized. I get it. And I started thinking about this, and I was like, hold on a minute. A lot of the things we do for spa and relaxation are actually stressors. Like a sauna, you go sitting in a fucking hot room until you learn how to bloody relax. So what you're doing is you're actually training your parasympathetic nervous system. You're strengthening your ability to relax. So that's something you can physically train, your ability to relax. But even just sitting there with your eyes shut, doing meditation, you call it relaxation, and it is, but you're actually training yourself to deal with this weird situation where you're just doing nothing and having to face yourself and be okay with it.
So one quick question, because not everyone listening to this will know it is, what is an SSRI?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the main antidepressants that are used at the moment. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
I know how to work. Just want to make sure people listening know what they were.
Okay, great. Gotcha.
So just a couple questions I always like to ask everyone before we kind of end everything. So one question I always like to ask is, if you were to die tonight, what would you regret not doing?
Finishing my books.
Finish your books. And what, you said books plural, so what are the books that you're writing?
Okay. Well, writing one on how to deal with depression.
Okay.
And one on basically on masculinity, healthy masculinity. I'm not using the phrase healthy masculinity because that's too much of a reaction to the term toxic masculinity, which we've had too much of, to be honest. Not that there isn't unhelpful aspects of how we are culturally conditioned, but certain terms become unhelpful eventually. So, and I think that's one of them. So yeah, it's about a new synthesis of taking wisdom from everything from, like progressivism and traditionalism and everything else, and learning why things are the way that they are, about the human body, about trauma, and like how to build yourself with your own chosen values and principles. That's essentially what it's about.
I love it. Yeah, the healthy masculinity thing, obviously, whatever you title it, I really like that because it's something that, obviously, I lived in New York, I lived in London, I have friends all around the world, and it's a very unfortunate thing. And I don't actually like using the word toxic masculinity because I feel like a lot of these things get thrown around and get used
as
too
a
freely.
weapon.
Same thing with like gaslighting and fuckboy and all these things. Like, I'm not against it, but I feel like it gets overused, and it just gets used for something. If someone doesn't like what the person does, they're like, oh, he's this. And I'm like, nah, I was like, actually, those mean something very... Yeah, exactly.
Not every ex of yours is a narcissist. If you think all your exes are narcissists, you're probably the narcissist.
It's a very interesting way of saying it. And then one other question: can you tell about the person who shaped your values the most?
Probably my mum. Yeah, and like she didn't put too much on us. Like nothing about religion, nothing about politics. But she was like very. Like she was very into like what was right and wrong for herself, and she let us, figure a lot of things out for ourselves growing up. And I just noticed a lot of unfairness and unjustness in the world, and I think that probably is the thing that's shaped my values the most.
And sorry, my dog was being so I know that you hungry.
That's good. Must be hungry. He's eating plants.
Well, no, he eats grass in the park. So yeah, no, but he's definitely doing it because he wants to be a little shit. Because he's still a puppy. He's 18 months old. So yeah.
What's he called?
This is Bluey. So yeah,
he's a handsome boy.
He's the Manly Convos mascot, but he wants to eat. So I'm gonna leave him here for a second. And then the last question I have: the next couple of years were a chapter. What would that chapter be?
I think it would be called I don't know, something like writer.
Writer.
Yeah.
And so you have those 2 books you're trying to write. So when are you trying to get them published?
Oh God, about 3 years ago.
Okay.
No, I mean they're not. I'll be working on them like some time, and a lot of it is formulating as I go, and I feel that I'm also formulating as I go. So, so it takes a while. It's a kind of a process. It's bigger than me. It's like who the fuck am I to write these books on such big topics? But who am I not to either? So, so I just keep plodding away, trying to make sense of things best I can and hope it's useful.
I couldn't imagine writing a book. There's no way I could write a whole, well, not no way, but yeah, I would struggle to write a whole book. I think I could write like some blogs, but writing a whole book is very difficult to write something that's cohesive, that people want to listen, read, things like that. I think it's really hard.
How old are you?
I'm 38.
Yeah. Give it 10 years and then it'll start to come around.
Why 10 years?
There's just something about like from 45 to 55. That's when like the book thing starts to go off in your head.
Okay, and just because of age and experience.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's we do go through various stages, and what's called the midlife crisis is almost like a second adolescence that we go through as we're shifting gears and perspectives a little bit.
Well, I don't have any other questions, but I really appreciate you joining today. It was some really interesting topics, and also I really like some of the things you said that I think I'm excited actually to publish some of them on some of the clips on Instagram, because I think people are it's gonna really resonate. I think it's something that's really different and really, really fresh. So I really appreciate you joining today.
Yeah. So like just in a nutshell, if you want to help with depression, cold at the end of showers, and do things for other people.
I really like that, especially the do things for other people. I think even if you're not depressed, I think we should all do that as a society.
Yeah. Even if you're not depressed, your mental health can still be improved.
Totally. 100%. Well, I really appreciate you joining today. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Bye.